Hello ladies and gentlemen, once again this is Jeremy Smith. Finally guys, I have the Rebel T6i in my hands. Now, I will admit, things didn't turn out exactly the way I planned. I planned to show you guys the T6i and the T6s at the exact same time. However, at the camera shop where I work, literally an hour before I was getting everything all ready, someone called and said, "Hey, do you guys have any T6s's?" And of course I just had one, so anyways, they came by and I sold it to them. So that left me with just the T6i. So just keep in mind guys, I am going to be doing some more comparisons very soon. Most notably, I plan to do a review to compare the T6i and T6s to the D5500, which the timing is perfect on that too because Lightroom 6 just came out with support for the D5500 RAW files. Unfortunately, Lightroom 6 has still got a couple of bugs. So by the time all that settles down, hopefully I will have some more T6S's and T6Is in my hands, since this is actually the only T6i I had available to me as well. So very soon, all that will be all sorted, and we'll be able to look at some things in more detail. I'm just going to kind of go over some of the specs here with you, because I want to kind of compare to the previous Rebel model, the T5i. Looking at that camera, the biggest thing, in my opinion, the biggest thing that we have here is the fact that we have Wi-Fi built in. And this is something that I'll show you guys closer up, but there's actually a NFC chip down here on the bottom. So very cool there. 24 megapixels versus 18. And we still have the same exact ISO range from 100 to 12,800 with a boost ISO up to 25,600. And let's see. Oh yeah, that's right. 19-point autofocus system too. So, you know, I was talking about during my D5500, I was saying how all these entry-level cameras are starting to grow up, and that is definitely the case with this camera as well. I mean, we've got a 19-point AF system that's going to be very similar to what we have in cameras like the 70D. So that's very impressive also. It's about time Canon did that. Let's see, still 5 frames a second. Now, when we start talking about the T6s, it adds a few more features. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of that right now, but honestly, I'm not really sure where the T6s fits. It's kind of interesting that they started to put more features on it. The T6s is almost like an answer to a question no one asked. I'm still not really sure why you wouldn't just go for the 70D, but anyways, as I said, I'll get into that later. But on the T6s, they add a top info screen, so it actually has an info display like some of the other higher cameras, or like all the other higher cameras. And let's see what else we have on it. We also have the ability to do continuous AI servo focusing whenever we're using live view. Now that's a nice touch, because a lot of times people want to be able to use that swiveling LCD and shoot at a lower angle, but you might be taking photographs of kids or something like that. They may be running about, and having the ability to continuously focus while still using that live view screen can be very good. So I think that's a very good thing that they've added. Let's see, they also let's see here. We also have a quick control dial too on it. So basically, the T6s has 2 command dials. So you can, basically it's going to be more like the 70D and higher cameras, where you have one adjustment for shutter speed and one adjustment for aperture. So pretty cool. Not something that we've ever seen on an entry-level body before. And let's see, they also, quick command. Oh yes, they also decided to give it a locking mode dial, so you can actually lock it in position like you do on the higher models. To be honest with you, I think that all the camera manufacturers should just make that standard across the board. I mean, they put it on the higher cameras. If you think about it though, a more entry-level user might actually have a greater chance of bumping that dial and not really realizing what's going on. So, I mean, it actually makes more sense to put that on lower cameras as opposed to higher ones, if anything. But I think they should just put it on all the cameras and be done with it. Let's see here. There's also an HDR mode on the T6s. And this is something too that I found was interesting. And this is some stuff that I kind of researched on my own and didn't find online. And I'm surprised there's not more mention of it. But apparently the T6s also has a digital zoom whenever you are shooting movies. So that way you can actually get a little bit more zoom out of your lens, or if you don't want to have to physically change zoom, it's going to be a lot more camcorder-like. So it makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, I would never use it, but for people that that are used to using a compact type camera, or for people that are expecting their DSLR to be more camcorder-like, it definitely makes a lot of sense. And that digital zoom goes between 3 times and 10 times. Let's see, there's also an electronic level. Okay, and let's see here. Of course, the locking mode dial, which I just mentioned. And the burst rate in live view, you can also do that as well along with the continuous focus. The burst rate is not 5 frames a second whenever you're shooting with the live view screen, but it still gives you 3 frames a second, which is better than nothing. And of course, there's also an eye sensor, so that way whenever you raise the T6s up to your eye, it will automatically shut off the LCD. So all in all, I'd say some pretty notable differences. I'm not sure why they didn't just make one camera. And there's a couple things. I'm just kind of wondering if it kind of encroaches too far into the 70D territory. But anyways, like I said, guys, I'm going to get into that later on. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at the T6i that I do have in hand. And then I'll give you guys some final thoughts. And that way you guys can give me some feedback, so that way we know exactly what to do whenever we start talking about comparisons and things like that in the future. Okay, taking a quick close look at the camera, you'll notice that the ergonomics are just slightly different here. The camera's kind of boxier, as you can kind of tell here. Not necessarily a bad thing. It feels good in hand. It doesn't feel as cheap as a lot of the past Rebels, which is certainly good. All the jokes I've made about Rebel build quality over the years. So we've got the ISO button right there. Let's put it in mode where we can do something. So we do have a touchscreen on this one, just like the T5i. We've got our very familiar Canon quick menu here. Now, back in the days of the T3i, they started to add the ability to do wireless commander flash. And this is something I wish Nikon would do on their, at least on like the 5500 type camera, the 5000 series type camera. It'd be very, very nice to do that. Are you listening to me, Nikon? So you have a very familiar quick menu button here. I like how it kind of pops up and gives you some different explanations about things. So for people just getting started, if as they start to delve into more of the manual settings, they can kind of have a little bit of feedback. Unfortunately, on Canon, this is something I've mentioned a lot of times, but unfortunately on their spot metering, it still doesn't follow the focus point. And no, it doesn't follow the focus point on the newer 5DS or the 7D Mark II either. But yeah, we do have more metering options. We do at least have a spot meter, and that's something we haven't had on a lot of the Rebel models in the past. We've got our focus points right there. Of course, it is that 19-point autofocus system. I'll have to do a little bit more investigation and see how it differs between the focus system used on the 70D. Of course, I suppose we could do a 70D comparison video with this camera too. That could be interesting. ISO button, display button. It's kind of different having that there. By default, I think it's interesting how we have this button for focus and this button for focus. Oh, okay, I see how that works. You hit this button right here, and as you keep pressing it, it changes between the focus modes, whereas hitting this button allows you to come up and change the focus points. Okay, that makes sense. Very straightforward there. I like how Canon does this. They have your on and off, and then they have the movie mode straight up like that. Now, this camera does have autofocus in video mode, and of course we're going to have to give it a little bit of a test to see how it does in comparison to the 5500. The 5500 is still technically using a contrast detect system, although thanks to the newer processor, the whole thing The whole operation seems to work much faster. This camera does not use the dual pixel CMOS AF from the 70D, so it doesn't have focus pixels covering the entire sensor. Instead, it uses Canon's hybrid AF system, so it's kind of a mix of contrast detect and phase detect points. But it still seems to be very fast. Apparently, Canon, they've reworked some of their algorithms, so it seems to be they say that it works. They say that even though it's not the same physical system that's found in the 70D and the 7D Mark II, they do say that because of the newer processing, it actually has similar performance. So that's something that definitely has my name written on it as far as a test to do in the future. Of course, we've got our connections back here. And then we have our microphone and our cable release. Of course, we can manually change audio levels on the microphone. Still no headphone jack though. Of course, Nikon and Canon both want you to go up to higher models to get that. They want you to go up to, in Canon's case, they want you to go all the way to the 70 Mark II. In Nikon's case, they want you to go like to a 7100 or 7200. Pretty straightforward. As I continue to play with this camera more, definitely let me know if you have anything you'd like to see in the comments. I think I've mentioned like at least 3 or 4 different comparison videos I'd like to make using this camera. But if there's something that you'd like to see, definitely let me know. And we will definitely be looking at this a lot more. Hopefully that T6s availability will speed up so that way I'll have more of those to play with. And we'll have ourselves a very large comparison video. There's not really a Nikon equivalent to the T6s per se. The 5500 is the closest thing, so it's going to be one Nikon and 2 Canons. So should be a very interesting video. Until next time, don't forget to subscribe for all future updates, and write me in the comments if you have any questions. Until next time, this is Jeremy Smith, signing off.